What's up? Let's talk about, what are we talking about? What's up? Let's talk about the artist's identity. So today I was on Twitter when I came across this tweet. An exhibition dedicated to all women artists turned out to have included an artwork by a man, and it had to be taken down. Another tweet I came across was this one. The caption? I'm gonna read it off my screen over here. The Medusa statue installed across from the courthouses on Center Street is not a political statement. It's nothing more than yet another naked female figure portrayed by yet another white male artist. So do you see the common thread here? Why are we talking about the race or sex of the person who made the artwork? The art hangs on the wall alone, right? So why do we have women-only exhibitions, Latino-only open calls, Filipino-only exhibitions, those kinds of things where we alienate and present only one minority group forward? It's a tricky situation, and it's definitely something I've teetered on the edge of committing to either side for a little bit. At first, my initial reaction is like, yes, go women-only exhibitions, go Latino-only exhibitions. But I feel like there's some pitfall you can fall into whenever you start criticizing an artist's work purely for their identity. I don't find it productive. On one hand, minority artists had been excluded from the art world for centuries. They'd been blocked from entering art institutions and not allowed to go to art school. For example, I believe it was like in the French Revolution era, they only just started allowing women into the name of the art school at the time. Man, my memory ain't the best. I'll put it on the screen somewhere. But yeah, and they ended up capping it at like 3 or 4 women. Whenever women started entering, they're like, whoa, we don't want this anymore. Minority artists were criticized, ostracized, and alienated in a way majority artists just weren't. Their work was appropriated by white male artists and only seen sophisticated until a white male artist did the same thing. Take African art, for example. Picasso was the person who popularized that kind of style among elite people, because up until the 20th century, for some reason, they just considered African art not a thing. They didn't think that they were like capable of it for some absurd reason, just because it looked different from European art. They considered African art just to be something primitive, and that's why Picasso was a major influencer in the primitivism movement, because he looked at African art, looked at their masks, looked at all their stuff, and was like, wow, that's pretty cool. He painted it himself, and then now suddenly the elite audience is like, oh wow, it's so sophisticated, groundbreaking, awe-inspiring. Like, no, what are you doing? So this is why we have this spotlight on minority figures. For so long, they hadn't been allowed to have a voice, and their voice had been taken by majority groups and used against them. Their narrative was rewritten by someone who had no recollection of what their experiences might have been like. But at what point do we become so obsessed with artist identity that we lose sight of the artwork? When does it get to a point where an artwork is good simply because the person of this made it? Why do we see headlines that are pretty much just talking about the identity of the artist? That's just not something I find productive. So let's talk about the artist's identity. What role should it play in the artwork, if any? Can it get to a point where it's destructive to our interpreting of the artwork? Let's break it down. So if you've ever walked into an exhibition space, like just put yourself there, close your eyes and imagine these white walls around you. You walk into a room and there's a bunch of paintings on the walls. You open your eyes and you look around. There's a very, very, very high chance every single work you see is going to be by a white male artist. 85 to 87% chance. I mean, the guerrilla girls who were this feminist art movement during the 20th century often made signs like this: do women have to be naked to get into the Met? Most of the artists there are male, and most of the artwork is female nudes. That's just, you see where the issue is? And why is this important? Art is the expression of the self. It's a way we communicate ideas, and it's inauthentic to the human experience if we only ever hear the voice of one type of person. Minority-only exhibitions are a chance to flip that narrative on its head. Give you a taste of something new. Give minority groups a chance to stand on the same pedestal majority groups had access to for centuries. Not only is it good for the audience to hear a new narrative, but it's also good for the artists to have that experience, to have their voice heard. It also creates a really interesting effect. It creates this environment where women have painted women, Black people have painted Black people, Latino people have painted Latino people. In the past, what had happened is white men would look around at the world and paint what they see. Take Gauguin, for example. His most famous period of work was just looking at a bunch of native people in their land and objectifying them. But now those native people have a chance to portray themselves without having that aspect of objectness, this weird voyeurism. That said, I do think that there's a little bit of an echo chamber that happens if you criticize an artist's work solely on their identity. Let's talk about the cons. For example, the tweet about the Medusa statue. It's nothing more than another naked female figure made by yet another white man. Very true. I could not agree more. But I feel like it alienates the very audience they're trying to sway. It's not constructive at all. I don't think crappy nail art is made intentionally. I don't think they sit down and say, let's think of ways to objectify minority groups. And yes, there is a problem with men painting and sculpting an idealized female figure. I especially hate it. I can't stand it. I can't tell you how many times I've been on Instagram and be scrolling through someone's feed and being like, wow, I love all this artwork. This is pretty cool, because I'm a figure painter. I follow figure painting accounts. And so I'll be scrolling and I'll be like, wow, this is so fun. And then I notice the trend. I'm noticing female nudes over and over and over, literally painting nothing else. I check the artist profile. Yep, it's a dude. I unfollowed. Why do I unfollow? Because painting is a message. And if you have nothing better to say than look at this woman's skin, it's objectifying, dehumanizing, and gross. Women who paint women don't objectify them nearly to the extent that men do. I believe there's always going to be some element of objectifying when it comes to art making, because you kind of have to take this like unknown identity, this person who lives and breathes and speaks and has all these things that you can't even see, and then make them into this like two-dimensional object. That's a whole thing for another time. But either way, it's like, stop it, paint something more interesting, pick something else, paint from your own experiences. And I think that's where the little nugget is. You can't criticize an artist's artwork for their identity. You can't say, I hate this work because it was made by a man, because they can't change what they are. It's not constructive criticism. It's a non-starter. What are they going to do other than become bitter and more set in their ways? Bring up the fact that they should explore their own experiences and work to portray those parts of themselves instead of portraying the lives and experiences of others. To bring it back to the Medusa statue, why should someone who has never had to struggle through women's rights create a monument in the name of it? It's pandering, inappropriate, and inauthentic. And there are tons of different examples of this happening in the art world, tons of different examples of artists who overstepped their boundaries because of their identity and painted something they had no experience with, and they caused uproar. Take Dana Schutz in The Open Casket, for example, where she, a white woman, painted the open casket of a dead Black boy. She's never had to go through those kinds of racial tensions, and so it was inappropriate. So there you have it. Should the artist's identity be part of the conversation, or should we leave it out? Let me know down in the comments what you think. Without further ado, I'ma bid you farewell. Alright, so thanks for sticking it out if you watched this whole video. This has been super fun. Yeah, I am Jen. I'm a contemporary artist and painter, and I make videos about the art world, controversial controversies. Is it an S or an SH sound? I also am a mess. So let's see. You can follow me on Instagram. I also started using Twitter a bit, although it's a little bit new to me, so don't know. Either way, I hope you enjoyed. If you want to see more, be sure to like, subscribe, and all that jazz. Yeah, go art.